Picture this. You're a Roman soldier, exhausted from months of brutal warfare. Your commander orders a suicidal charge. You hesitate for just a moment, and that moment of human weakness will cost you everything. Welcome to the merciless world of Roman military discipline, where loyalty was measured in blood. Dawn breaks over a Roman military camp in Germania, 15 CE. The mist clings to the wooden palisades as the first notes of the buccina pierce the morning air. Within moments, 20,000 men are on their feet, moving with mechanical precision that would make a modern drill sergeant weep with envy. The clatter of mail armor, the rhythmic thud of hobnailed boots on packed earth, the sharp crack of centurions' vine staffs. This is the sound of the most feared military machine the ancient world had ever known. But strip away the bronze eagles and crimson standards, and what do you see? Boys, mostly. Farm hands from the Italian countryside. Merchants' sons seeking glory. Veterans whose weathered faces tell stories of 25 years spent bleeding for Rome. Marcus Flavius adjusts his baldric with trembling fingers, not from cold, but from the weight of what he's about to become. At 19, he's left behind his family's olive grove in Campania for the promise of citizenship, steady pay, and a chance to carve his name into history. From 753 BCE, beggars with eyes like winter stone. These men had broken. They had run. And in doing so, they had committed the one unforgivable sin in the Roman military. They had chosen their own lives over the glory of Rome. Every 10th man. When Romulus supposedly founded the city, to 476 CE, when the last Western emperor fell, Rome's military evolved from a ragtag citizen militia into the most professional fighting force the world had ever seen. The transformation wasn't gradual. It was forged in blood and terror. Marius's military reforms of 107 BC had created professional soldiers, men who served not just for a season, but for decades. These weren't weekend warriors defending their farms. They were career killers whose loyalty belonged entirely to Rome. The Roman military manual, the Epitome Rei Militaris, didn't mince words about discipline. It was, quite literally, a matter of life and death. Every morning, as Marcus and his comrades formed ranks, they were reminded that their lives belonged not to themselves, but to the legion, to Rome, to the eagle standard that gleamed in the early light, its golden wings spread in eternal vigilance. But here's what the histories often gloss over. These men weren't automata. They were human beings with fears, doubts, and the same survival instincts that had kept their ancestors alive since the dawn of time. Gaius Scribonius clutches a letter from his wife, now 3 months pregnant with a child he may never see. Lucius Antonius still wakes screaming from nightmares of the Germanic tribes they'd fought the previous summer. Yet every morning, they strapped on their armor. They picked up their shields. They marched where they were told to march, fought where they were told to fight, and died where they were told to die. Not because they were naturally brave, though many were, but because the alternative to obedience was far worse than facing any barbarian horde. Rome understood something that other ancient powers missed. Fear of your own commanders could be more motivating than fear of the enemy. The Gallic chieftains might torture prisoners. The Germanic tribes might take heads as trophies. But only Rome had perfected the art of making its own soldiers more afraid of stepping out of line than of dying in battle. But what happened when that iron discipline cracked? When human nature finally rebelled against inhuman demands? The answer came swift and merciless, as Marcus Flavius would soon discover. 2 years after that first dawn in Germania, his legion faces Arminius's Germanic tribes in the dense forests near the Rhine. The battle goes badly. Surround and will die. Not for personal cowardice. That would be too simple. They will die because the unit broke, because the eagle standard was abandoned. This is decimation. Decimatio. 1 in 10. Chosen not by crime or guilt, but by the blind mathematics of fate. Marcus finds himself grouped with his tentmates, his contubernarium, The men who had shared everything from rations to secrets to dreams of home. Gaius Scribonius, whose wife had given birth to a son he's never met. Titus Varro, who owes Marcus money from a dice game. Lucius Caecilius, who saved Marcus's life at the crossing of the Weser River. These men know each other's scars, their fears, their hopes for the future. But now they must reach into a leather bag and draw lots. 9 white stones, 1 black. Roman commanders understood that random selection was more terrifying than targeted execution. When death could come to anyone, regardless of their actions, every soldier became acutely aware that their life belonged to Rome, and Rome could claim it whenever it chose. Marcus's hand trembles as Gaius Scribonius reaches into the bag. The stone feels warm from the Mediterranean sun, smooth from countless hands. When Gaius opens his palm, the black stone seems to pulse with malevolent life. Marcus stares at his friend, the man who had shared his bread during the siege of Alesia, who had carried him to safety when fever nearly killed him in Syria. But the cruelty doesn't end with the lottery. Roman law is specific. The condemned must be killed by their own comrades. Outnumbered, watching their comrades fall like wheat before the scythe, Marcus's century breaks and runs, not from cowardice, but from the most human of instincts, the desperate desire to see another sunrise. But survival comes at a price that none of them could have imagined. The remnants of the legion stand in ragged formation before Marcus Licinius Crassus's heir, their new commander surveying the survivors. The other 9 men in the tent group are handed clubs and stones. They are ordered to beat their friend to death. This is the psychological masterstroke of decimation. It breaks not just the condemned, but the survivors. Marcus will never again look at his own hands without seeing Gaius Scribonius' blood. The sound of his friend's skull cracking will echo in his dreams for the rest of his life. The legion that survives decimation becomes legendary for its discipline, but at the cost of its humanity. Yet even this ultimate punishment was just one tool in Rome's arsenal of control. 6 months later, Marcus Flavius understands that death might have been the merciful option. Transferred to the Syrian frontier, haunted by nightmares of Gaius Scribonius' final moments, he makes a single desperate mistake. Caught stealing bread from a civilian merchant, not for profit, but because hunger and trauma have broken his judgment, Marcus discovers that Rome has perfected punishments worse than death. Centurion Gaius Brutus catches him red-handed. Under Roman military law, theft from civilians carries severe penalties, but Marcus won't face the swift death of decimation. His punishment will be the slow, methodical destruction of everything that makes him a Roman soldier, a Roman citizen, a Roman man. The punishment begins with castigatio, public humiliation before the entire legion. Stripped to the waist, Marcus is beaten with the centurion's vine staff, while 5,000 of his former comrades watch. Each blow is measured, calculated to cause maximum pain without. The psychological warfare attacks the foundation of Roman identity, dignitas. For Romans, dignity wasn't personal pride, it was cosmic order. Strip away dignity, and you strip away existence itself. The isolation destroys Metellus slowly. Former subordinates avert their eyes. Officers pretend he doesn't exist. Letters from his family become desperate as news reaches Gaul. Marcus recognizes the symptoms because he feels them himself. The crushing weight of shame, the sense that life has lost all meaning. Historical records show numerous officers choosing suicide rather than endure ignominia. Marcus Flavius Scriptor fell on his sword after losing his eagle standard. Gaius Valerius Maximus threw himself from his camp walls. Death seemed preferable to life without honor. Metellus understands this as Marcus watches him stare across the Syrian desert. He's lost more than rank or privileges. He's lost his place in the cosmic order that made life meaningful. The man who held the line against Arminius, who survived decimation, who bled for Rome across 3 continents, no longer exists. Marcus realizes he's witnessing the final act of Roman military discipline, not just the destruction of a man's body or career, but the annihilation of his very soul. And in that moment, He understands that he too is already dead, just still walking. The sun sets over the ruins of a Roman fort in northern Britain. The parade grounds are silent now, but Marcus Flavius's ghost walks here still, along with Gaius Scribonius, Titus Varro, Lucius Caecilius Metellus, and countless others whose names history forgot, but whose suffering built an empire. Rome's brutal system of military discipline worked. For over a millennium, Roman legions dominated the world through absolute obedience forged in terror. But the price wasn't paid only by conquered peoples, it was paid in the shattered souls of Rome's own soldiers. Did this system actually work? Historically, yes. Legions that underwent decimation became legendary for discipline. Fear drove soldiers to superhuman feats. But modern military psychologists recognize that armies built on fear become brittle under stress. The system that made Rome invincible may have planted seeds of its destruction. Marcus Flavius, Gaius Scribonius, Titus Varro, Lucius Caecilius Metellus. These weren't names on monuments but human beings who paid the ultimate price for Roman glory. They deserve recognition not for conquests, but for suffering. Rome's soldiers conquered the world, but at what cost to their souls? The stones of Roman forts still stand, but the men who bled for them are forgotten. Perhaps that's the most brutal punishment, to sacrifice everything for an empire that would outlast memory, but not pain. Every stone was placed by hands that trembled not with fear of enemies, but fear of their own commanders. That lesson echoes still, permanent injury. But the physical pain fades. The shame does not. Next comes gradus diectio, reduction in rank. Marcus, who had earned his position as optio through years of faithful service, loses his status overnight. The bronze torque that marked his authority is torn from his throat. The extra pay that supported his family back in Campania disappears. The respect of younger soldiers evaporates like morning mist. The Munus system kicks in. Extra duties designed to break both body and spirit. While his former subordinates sleep, Marcus digs latrines. While they eat their evening meals, he stands guard at distant outposts. While they write letters home, he carries the heavy wooden stakes used to fortify the camp, his shoulders bleeding under the weight. Roman military theorists understood that a soldier's identity was built on three pillars: virtus, courage; disciplina, discipline; and dignitas, dignity. Remove anyone, and the man crumbles. Remove all three, and you create a walking ghost, alive but utterly destroyed. The financial penalties crush what remains of his spirit. Docked pay, lost retirement benefits, forfeiture of the land grants awaiting veteran soldiers. For a man who had served expecting comfortable retirement, this means poverty and destitution in old age. His family suffers too, facing social ostracism, denied military privileges. Marcus's tentmates begin to avoid him. His letters home go unanswered as his family learns of his disgrace. He becomes a living reminder of what happens when discipline breaks down. By sunset, he understands the terrible arithmetic. His moment of weakness has cost him his rank, honor, future, and identity. He's still breathing, but everything that made him worth being has been stripped away. But Rome wasn't finished with soldiers like Marcus. The cruelest punishments were yet to come. 3 years pass. Marcus Flavius, now a broken shell of his former self, witnesses something that completes his education in Roman military justice. Centurion Lucius Caecilius Metellus, the same man who once served in Marcus's tent group, who survived the decimation that claimed Gaius Scribonius, makes a fatal error in judgment during a Germanic raid. One moment of hesitation, one decision to preserve his men's lives rather than follow a suicidal order, brings down the full weight of Roman military law. The sentence is ignominia, public dishonor that destroys not just career, but identity itself. Marcus watches as Metellus is stripped of his decorations before the entire legion. Each philera is torn from his cuirass with deliberate ceremony, the bronze clattering to the ground like shattered dreams. His vine staff, the symbol of his authority, is broken over the knee of the primus pilus. The sound echoes across silent ranks like a bone snapping. Under ignominia, Metellus becomes a living ghost. He must pitch his tent outside the camp's protective walls, among camp followers and supplers. Every night, as his former comrades sleep safely behind earthworks, he lies exposed to enemy raids and wild animals. His meals become markers of shame. Barley instead of wheat, the food of horses and slaves. His military tunic is replaced with civilian dress, marking him as an outsider among warriors.